Bills quarterback Josh Allen says he's never been more focused and locked in than he is right now. We'll dive into what exactly that looks like during OTAs.
The Bills are a Super Bowl contender, but they have a couple of really big position battles happening on defense this offseason.
The PlayAction podcast starts now.
Spring practices are here in the NFL, and the Bills had their first OTA, organized team activity week of practices. Josh Allen, the Bills quarterback, just turned 27 years old, so a belated happy birthday to Josh. And Josh, as it happens, had an interesting press briefing with the media on Tuesday. Katherine, what did you think of what Josh had to say?
Yeah, so we've heard a few times now from Josh Allen that he feels more focused than ever before. But what I thought was interesting from this week was how he talked a bit more about what that actually looks like, about how he's communicating with teammates, what he's talking about with Ken Dorsey, where it's not a surprise that he's super focused. And, Sean McDermott, any of us have been like quick to say, like, okay, it's not that he wasn't focused before. But like, how does this exactly tangibly appear? And what I thought was most interesting was saying how he off the field sometimes is a bit more laid back. So it's making sure he's more structured in his communication instead of just being like, hey, I'll throw it up, you catch it, we're good. Very much like delving into stuff to a deeper level than before. Again, not to say that there was no communication previously, but I think just that experience, that urgency after the playoff losses the last few years, that's how it's manifesting for Josh in this focus that has come up multiple times so far.
Good points. Yeah, I agree that the communication piece is something he really emphasized. How, you get the sense he feels he's got to take the initiative more in being on the same page with everybody. And again, they communicate constantly, but it was a point of emphasis for him. I also get the sense that for Josh and the whole team, the end of last season was a message to the Bills that the competition is really steep. And, he talked about how, yeah, the offense was like fourth in the league last year, or sixth overall in yards, and it wasn't good enough. And I think that from Josh's standpoint, he looks at, he's got to be better than, or the Bills need him to be very close to as good as Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow. And that's a steep hill. One comment that he made, he made two references to the word, my eyes got to be in the right place. And I think as we saw later in the season, that, there were times where he was, running RPOs, doesn't pull the trigger. He wasn't, the offense wasn't running on schedule as well as it needed to run. Josh is a better quarterback than Joe Burrow off schedule. Joe Burrow was better than Josh on schedule last year. Joe Burrow had better talent, better players, more guys getting open quicker than Josh Allen. But there's room there for Josh to grow. And I think it was good to hear him emphasize that on Tuesday.
Yeah. And I think, again, it's just fine tuning stuff where, there's been times in the past when we've said, like, hey, walk us through this touchdown to Stephon Diggs. And it basically was like, I throw it up, he catches it, it's good, backyard football. And that works a lot of the time for them. And it's great when it does. But I think just knowing, what can we sharpen here? What can we really hone in on to make sure it doesn't necessarily come down to a dazzling catch that wasn't supposed to happen. And I think too,
Right.
just with the amount of turnover on this offense, there's a lot of new receivers. The running back room is still, James Cook has been on the Bills the longest of that group, just with the
Yeah.
way that's played out. So I think some of the communication is also, I really thought it was interesting how he was talking about trying to get a bit more specific of like, how does each player learn and meeting them where they're at. Again, just building on that from the past, but being a bit more structured is the way he said it, and those styles of communication.
Right. And as we know, the quarterback and the receivers, really OTAs are not real football, as Sean McDermott said. Nobody's got pads on. They're not really drastically improving the running game until they get to training camp. But the quarterback being on the same page with the receivers is where this starts. And the whole slot receiver issue I find fascinating, and this is something we're going to be talking about for the next 6 months. So how it all shakes out in the slot. Obviously, they drafted Kincaid, their first round draft pick, and he is going to play in the slot a lot. But who is the wide receiver who plays in the slot? That's going to be fascinating to watch through spring practices and into training camp, because is Deontay Hardy going to be the guy? The impression is he's more of the gadget guy. Or is it Khalil Shakir when it's not Kincaid? We got a lot of months to talk about that, but that's all still to be shaken out for Josh Allen and the offense the rest of the spring.
Like we said already, OTAs are not exactly real football, but we also got a good look at the Bills' defense this week. Mark, what were some things that stood out to you?
I think the obvious thing we're going to be watching again through spring and all summer training camp is going to be the middle linebacker. It's the Tremaine Edmonds, 83-inch wingspan hole in the defense, and and again, it's not nothing's going to get settled in the spring. I think the more I think about this, the more it just seems apparent, obvious to me that they really need Terrell Bernard, their second year linebacker, to step in to this spot. I mean, he's the obvious choice. They drafted Dorian Williams in the third round out of Tulane. He has a little more size, kind of intrigued by his athleticism, his whole package. But as Brandon Beane said when he drafted him, and that he's coming from a more simple Tulane defense. Brandon gave the clear implication that they're gonna be patient with him learning the NFL system, and asking a rookie to step in there. Sean said Dorian's working at middle linebacker, period. But it's asking a lot. Terrell Bernard is the third round. They invested a third round draft pick. Is it going to be Terrell Bernard, AJ Klein, or Terrell Dodson? I mean, Bernard would be the one they really want to step up. He's the one with the 4.59 speed. He's the one who has the instincts, or at least that's the MO coming out of college from Baylor. Great instincts. They've got AJ Klein. They have total trust in him. He's the fallback. Dotson was an undrafted guy, has good size, but I think it's got to be that their desire would be to see Bernard step up and take this thing by the horns. So, my eyes are going to be on him through the rest of the spring and minicamp.
Yeah, and I think to that point, it will be ongoing as they evaluate there, try to get good looks at guys, but they're definitely not going to settle it anytime soon. So something just to keep an eye on. I'm also interested to see what happens at cornerback. Obviously last year they navigated so many different injuries, different timelines too. Tre'Davious White has now had a full off season to get back where, obviously he came back last year, did make some good plays, but was candid at the end of like, I'm still working through some stuff here. And so I think just seeing him a bit more back to pre-injury form will be really interesting, but then also who's going on that other side. We heard a little bit more about Christian Benford, if he will move to safety or not. It sounds like that is not the plan for right now.
Absolutely not. Yep.
Sean McDermott was very adamant about that, but John Butler gave great insight too of that's more just a testament to his versatility, to his football IQ. So all positives, even if they don't want to move him there necessarily. And And then just seeing what steps Kyer Elam takes in his second year, Dane Jackson, what he's done this offseason. So I think that'll be interesting considering how much rotation there was last year from rookie inexperience, again, from all those injuries, to now kind of go into training camp with your guys and figure out what makes the most sense.
Right. What makes the most sense in my eyes is Kyer Elam stepping up and winning the job. I mean, he's got the most talent, but as the Bills have shown in their on their defense, it's about trust. They have to trust the guy. They brought it again as a backup. AJ Klein is brought in as backup, but they trust that guy. Levi Wallace stayed on the field. They trusted that guy. They trust Dane Jackson. Will Kyer earn their implicit trust? It's going to be fun, fun and fascinating to watch.
Yeah, and it sounds like he's doing all the right things to do that as far as what he's done this offseason. And just again, kind of getting now you have a full NFL calendar year under your belt. You know a bit more the cadence of when do I start this part of my offseason routine? When do I do this versus the slight differences of a college schedule? So I think that's only going to help him moving forward. We'll be keeping an eye on all those storylines all spring, all summer. So make sure you're following wherever you get your podcasts on YouTube and on buffalonews.com.